Hi everybody, welcome back to the Joy of Trucking. I'm Kevin. I'm a solo over-the-road driver for Werner Enterprises. I want to tell you the story of my first week running out of Lake City, Florida, my new home terminal. So hit that subscribe button, sit back, and I'll tell you a story. First day out, went on duty before 5 a.m. and had a load before 5 a.m. That was pretty quick. I was picking up a split, which means it's a trailer that was already loaded and was brought there by another driver and dropped off. He had to go do something else, and so I'm going to pick up this trailer and deliver it to its final destination, which was only 140 miles north in Albany, Georgia. It was a load of beer that come out of Golden, Colorado, and I've pulled a lot of those going to Phoenix before. Very heavy trailer. Hooked up to the trailer, and the day before I'd noticed that the fifth wheel on the truck was all the way to the back, the farthest setting back on the sliding fifth wheel, and I usually run it pretty far forward. So the first thing I did after hooking up was try to move that fifth wheel ahead so I was more comfortable with the position, and being a heavy load, I wanted the load a little more balanced between the drives and the front axle of the truck. The darn thing wouldn't move. I tried like 3 or 4 times loosening, you got the switch inside the truck here to slide the fifth wheel back and forth, push and pull. Finally went and talked to a mechanic in the shop. He came out with a flashlight and, took a gander, but he said, without bringing it into the shop and tearing it apart, you're not going to find out anything. And I decided it was time to go. That was enough time spent on that, and maybe I could work on it later. It wasn't an issue that was stopping me or causing a hazard or anything else. And I didn't have far to go, so I was going to deal with that later if it became a bigger problem. So off I go to Albany, Georgia. It was a live unload, so I had the same trailer attached. When they took all the beer out of the back, I got myself some straps right off the bat on my first load. I got 4 straps out of that deal. And then as I was pulling away, I tried sliding the fifth wheel again, and it moved no problem. So the issue was all that weight on it, I guess, was holding it in place. I thought it might have been rusty or seized somehow, and I could hear the air cylinder, getting its air and discharging when you released it. So it wasn't a direct problem that I could figure out. And yet, without the load in the trailer, the fifth wheel slid really smoothly, and so I got it in the new position. So I learned something there. If it's really heavy, don't bother trying to move it. My next load, I was picking up in Fernandina Beach, Florida, which is way over on the coast. Tanya and I had visited there once before, about, 5 years before, I think it was. Off we went, and before I even got back to Interstate 75, I got a bunch of messages coming in, like on the tablet, like every 30 seconds it was dinging and dinging. Now this particular road, a state highway, there was no shoulder. There was actually a curb in a lot of places. No place to pull over, no truck stops, not even a mall. So I had to wait quite a while, but just before I got to I-75, I pulled over and I managed to check the messages, and it said that the load had been canceled. So I called in. Actually, they called me, and I called back. The load had somehow been changed. Now, this was a well over 200-mile deadhead to go pick up this load, so my guess is they found somebody in the neighborhood who could go get that without me driving for 3.5 hours. Without any paying load on board. So from there, I just went down to Valdosta, Georgia, halfway back to Lake City, picked up my next load there, and it was going to, it was going to a Lowe's, just the other side of Tallahassee, going west on I-10. So I picked up that load at a distribution center and took it to a Lowe's store in Crestview, Florida. And I don't know if you've watched the previous videos, but when you go to those stores, you switch trailers out at their loading dock so they can unload the next one, and then you hook up the empty that was there, and off you go again. But usually there's a delivery time because they don't unload after certain hours, and if it's in the morning, you can spend the night there if you want. But I got there about 4 in the afternoon, so I was able to park the trailer where they wanted and get my empty trailer and check it all out and head right back out again. So this is all still the first day. Now, leaving the Lowe's store in Crestview, Florida, my next load I was picking up at the Walmart distribution center just past Mobile, Alabama. So I spent the night there, just about the very end of Florida. Next morning, got into the distribution center, and we'd been there before, so I wasn't fooled by the wrong address and all that stuff that caused us so much confusion the first time. Got right in there, picked up that trailer, took off again, and now we're headed to St. James, Missouri, through Jackson, Mississippi, Memphis, Tennessee, St. Louis, Missouri, and then to St. James, Missouri, which is, so we're going up 55 from Memphis, and then from St. Louis back down the 44, which would have taken you all the way down to Oklahoma. So I spent the night in Missouri, managed to get through all those other cities in Jackson and Memphis and West Memphis and on up. Spent the night up in Missouri near a place called Festus. Reminds you of Gunsmoke, right? And then, so I drop off in St. James, Missouri near Rolla, one of my favorite loves. The next load takes me back up through St. Louis and back down 55, almost to where I spent the night, but I'm in this little town, so I had to go like the last 15 miles. I'm going through these very narrow country roads, through these little villages, up and down hills, hairpin turns. I'm doing like 30 miles an hour at the best. Get all the way into this little town at this place where they make hardwood, or they sell hardwood, sorry, and do other stuff to hardwood. And I'm supposed to pick up a load of hardwood there that's going all the way to Mexico. So after all this snaking and winding and cursing all the way through these back roads, I get to the place. They tell me to back up to the dock. I got the doors open. I back it up. I gotta go through this narrow place backwards. I get to the dock, and then the fella says, "Well, why are you here?" And I said, "I'm picking up a load of hardwood." He says, "We don't have anything for you." So I give him the numbers and the reference numbers and the destination and all this stuff. And he says, "I'm gonna go inside and check." And he goes and checks, and then he goes and gets the salesman, and the salesman comes out, and he's telling me, "No, we had a load last week going to Mexico, and we're gonna have another one next week, next Thursday, if you want to come back in a week. But there's nothing today." Get on the phone, call it in, say, "Hey, you know, these guys don't have anything for me here. Something wrong here." So the message comes back, "Just wait, we'll take care of it." So after almost an hour and a half sitting there at that dock, I get the message, "Here's your next load." So I had to pull out of there and close the doors and back through these twisty, windy country roads, and then back up to St. Louis for the third time that day. Crossed the Mississippi to our drop yard in East St. Louis, picked up a load there, so in and out pretty quick. This load is going down to Kentucky. So now I'm in Illinois, and I'm headed south, and I get down to, I'm out around Benton, Illinois, where I stopped for the night. The funny thing, when I was coming up into St. Louis the first time, I kept hearing these weather alerts. There's a big storm, there's hail, and 60-mile-an-hour winds hitting Memphis and on down into Mississippi. And I thought, well, I'm gonna pick up this load of hardwood and have to head right back down there, right through that mess. It's gonna be terrible. And then when it changed, I was headed north instead. So I dodged that weather bullet, and then just before I got to the drop yard, I saw a huge traffic jam in the direction I was gonna go, but I was headed up to the drop yard, and I knew when I came out in half an hour I'd have to sit in all this traffic. By the time I got back out, it had started moving again, so I just breezed right through, dodged another bullet that day. Spent the night in Benton, Illinois, back at a rest stop there. Next day, on down to Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and I believe I'm dropping off at a Walmart distribution center. Dropped it off, no empty trailer. Oh my goodness. Called it in. Next load they give me, I'm picking up at a Werner drop yard down in Lebanon, Tennessee, which is east of Nashville. Been there before. So because it's at a drop yard and I'm picking up a split load, it wasn't vital that I drop off an empty. So bobtail on down there. 100 miles bobtailing on a beautiful day. Picked up a load at that drop yard, going all the way down up to Winchester, Virginia. Now this is a Home Depot distribution center. So off I go on a 600-mile journey down to Nashville, across Tennessee, at Knoxville onto I-81, It takes you through into Virginia, and I stopped before Roanoke at a rest stop, so took a little rest there. Funny thing about the rest stops, when you get into that part of Virginia, a lot of them, like the Welcome Center, when you arrive in Virginia, no trucks allowed. The place I found near Roanoke, there was no like large truck parking area. You just park along the curb, basically nose to tail with everybody else, which is okay because there's nobody next to you running their engine all night. But at the same time, it's narrow. There's people zipping by you at all hours, and not a lot of capacity for other trucks and so on. Up into Winchester, Virginia, which is almost all the way up to Maryland, so way up I-81 the next day, and drop there at the Home Depot distribution center. Again, no empty trailers. Oh my gosh, that's twice. Next load, it said go to one of our drop yards and pick up a split load again. So again, I was able to bobtail. I didn't have to drive all over creation looking for an empty trailer. All the way up into Pennsylvania, Mount Holly Springs drop yard in this little, really small town, just off I-81 actually, so kept on going up 81. And I got there and I realized, the name sounded familiar and it all looked familiar, but when I actually got in the yard, I realized I'd been there once before, and I actually spent the night there once. That was kind of cool. Picked up a load going all the way down to Hopewell, Virginia, which is south of Richmond. Here's the thing, now it's Sunday, and it's Sunday afternoon, and been my experience in the Washington, D.C. area, especially I-95 between Richmond and D.C., it's nuts on a Sunday afternoon. All these people, all these four-wheelers trying to get home after their weekend jaunt wherever, so they can get home and go back to work Monday morning. I did my best to avoid that, taking back roads and routes around Washington, D.C. instead of going down the 270 and then the Beltway and then down I-95. When I looked on the Trucker Path app, which normally shows all the roads in green, there were red patches all the way down, some of them really dark red. And then I was listening to the radio that day and getting traffic reports from the DC area. There were accidents all over the place. Stuff was jammed up in a dozen places. And I know there's construction on I-95 too, going from DC down toward Richmond. So I went out of my way to go around through the country roads and then come out down at Fredericksburg, south of DC. And I looked at when I punched in the route and the destination, and it gave me an ETA on both my devices. When I actually got there, I was only a half an hour later. So going through all those back roads and little towns and stoplights and crazy stuff, the traffic was light, and it only took me a half an hour longer than the projected time going that way. And if I had gone down through on the route suggested, who knows, I could have been an hour or two later because of all the jam ups and stopping and everything else. So it was a lot less stressful. I saw the countryside, and I wasn't that much later. And the other thing about this load is it was a live load for Monday morning. A live unload, which means I couldn't show up Sunday night anyway with the load, and I couldn't stay on the property. So I didn't have to actually get there, and I had enough hours on my clock. What I actually did, drove past it 10 miles, went to a truck stop, and still had almost an hour left on my clock, which means I still had plenty of time. So where I wound up was at the Prince George exit. The 460 is the highway coming off 295 that goes down to Norfolk, Virginia. And Tanya and I had stayed there before, did a reset, and actually went to the Prince George barbecue, had some fantastic food there, real southern home cooking. So that's where I spent the night, Sunday night. Went over to the Prince George barbecue and had me some liver, real good liver, fried apples, sweet potato tots, good food. And then the next morning, Monday morning, I had to be back up in Hopewell, Virginia, like 10-12 miles away with this load. So this load had a bunch of cardboard for recycling in these big bales. It was 41,000 pounds. It was all this strapped up cardboard, shredded cardboard and stuff. I had to scale going into the place, and then it was a live unload. So they took the stuff off real quick. I had to sweep out the trailer. Of course, it was all chunks and pieces of cardboard like crazy. But then going out, scale again. So they give you, it's all an automated thing too. They had to talk me through it, but next time I'll know I don't even need help. You park on the scale, you get out, you go to the little booth, you punch in your load number and your truck number, gives you this little ticket with a barcode on it. So when you go out, scan the barcode, gives you another ticket. So what they're getting there is the precise weight of the load at their facility, and doing this scaling in and out gives them that data, and then you don't even check in. The guy that unloads you signs the bill, gives it right back to you. So at the security gate, you don't have to fuss or anything else. So I was in and out of there. Only had 2.5 hours left on my clock, and I, sent the message that I'd be ready for my next load and so on. Didn't hear anything, so back down to Prince George. I got down here to the Love Shack, put in a call and said, look, I only got 2.5 hours left. You got another load for me? I'll go pick up or do whatever. Because often doing a reset, I've picked up a load and then just sat with the load for my reset and then gone ahead and delivered it after I was back on the road. And I was told there's nothing else, may as well start your reset. So here I am at the Loves. That was my first week with my next truck. So I didn't say new truck. Here I am with Kelly Riggs in Prince George, Virginia, and that's our first week. So I got to total up the mileage here, tell you what I did. But now you know all the places I went, all the loads I carried. I did put in for home time down in Florida in 2 weeks, so I kind of figured they weren't going to send me too far west or too far north, so I could get back. If you go all the way to California, it's really hard for them to get you back home in time for your home time. So I was basically as far west and north as St. Louis, Missouri, and then all the way back down here to Virginia. So my guess is that this coming week I'm just going to be circling around this area and then back down to Florida. All right, here's the data. In the last week, so from Wednesday just to Monday morning, really, not even a full week, I did 6 loads. I drove 2,764 paid miles, and 717 of those were deadhead miles. There were 2 loads that were switched or taken away for various reasons while I was en route to them. Twice I had to bobtail to get to my next load because empty trailers were not available where I dropped off. Twice I had live unloads, so I had to pull up to a dock and wait until I got my load emptied from the trailer, but not very long, like less than an hour at both of those. So it wasn't too bad. It's not like I sat around for a long time waiting at a dock. So that's what happened to me in the last few days. I hope you got something from this. Give it a thumbs up, and let me hear your comments down below. This is the average week for a trucker. Now, our cutoff time is Tuesday at noon, so that's all that will go on to my next paycheck, because tomorrow is Tuesday and I'm pulling out late at night. So I'll start the next week with my next load at that time. So all these miles, this is all what I'm going to get paid for this week. Hit that subscribe button. Don't forget the thumbs up. I just love those thumbs up. And we'll see you down the road. Bye for now.